doing?
Watching the Hawks.
No, no. I apologize for being late.
That's all right. I think we're all here that are going to be here. So at this point, if you're ready, I will call to order the Planning Commission meeting and I'm going to ask for an approval of the agenda.
Make the motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we have approval of the minutes for the March 12th, 2026 meeting. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Minutes for March 12th. Is there a second?
Second.
Concern issues with it? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to public hearing, consideration of a rezoning petition from applicant Richard Spears on behalf of owner Clay Adams of a 5.02 acre tract with parcel number 0728-066 off of Dogwood Trail from C1 Community Commercial to R20 Conditional 1 acre, single family, 2,000 square foot minimum home size. Mr. Troquet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one item before you this evening is a rezoning from applicant Richard Spears on behalf of the owner, Mr. Clay Adams, who are both here this evening. The property does not have, this particular property does not have a designated address on Dogwood Trail, but it is close to 559 Dogwood Trail, which may indeed be the address of the adjacent property. There are no buildings on either property, so there may not be any official addressing, but that's what it's close to. The zoning is right now C1 Community Commercial. The proposed zoning is R20 conditional, and I'll get into that condition here in a second. The future land use category is Community Gateway. The surrounding zoning to the north is C1. C1 to the north, south is C1, which is a community commercial. East is R20, and to the west is C1 as well as O&I. The small parcel here is zoned to office, institutional. So this is the property that is in question, just below Glendalough Manor and just to the east of the shops at Glendalough. A little bit of history on this property. On January 5th of 2023, the Town Council considered and approved a rezoning request for 555 Dogwood Trail, which was the approximate address at that time, of this parcel from R20, which is residential, 2,000 square foot, minimum home size, 1 acre, to C1. At that time, it was downtown commercial. That classification has been reclassified to community commercial. The applicant at that time proposed dividing the tract so that one portion could accommodate a business use and the other a residence. Staff found that this request was consistent with the comp plan and future land use strategy, citing the presence of near one C1 properties at Dogwood Trail and the intersection of Highway 74. The ability to eliminate an adjacent non-conforming buffer condition was also considered. And there were site constraints, including floodplain and topography, that limited residential viability for the property. And I can show some of that on the parcel map here in a second. This was, at that time, 2 pieces of property. So I can, let me pull that up right now so we can get a clear understanding. This property was divided. What we're considering tonight is this parcel here, but it was part of the larger parcel present here as well. So in terms of the floodplain, that prior decision was made regarding some of this floodplain that you'll see on the property. It takes up a considerable portion over here. The C1 portion was divvied off and rezoned over here. This buffer here was what was in question. The non-conforming situation, we require a 75-foot buffer. So the buffer here is really only 30 feet. And so this property being C1 eliminated that buffer requirement on this property. and that made that property conforming again to the ordinance. Back. Staff and the Planning Commission did recommend approval at that time, and no one spoke in opposition at the public hearings. Council approved the request following the discussion of access and some easements to the property, as well as the floodplain considerations. The current application is submitted by a different owner and seeks to return the property to R20. The comprehensive plan and future development map, I wanted to get into this a little bit because we zoned a property C1, and it was in conformity with the Community Gateway land use plan. Now we're talking about a residential property, which is obviously different than commercial, and it also being in conformity. So I just kind of wanted, in terms of staff's opinion, I just wanted to lay that out. Community Gateway is a character area that aims to promote developments and zoning classifications that emulate a conservation-style approach to primarily commercial development along Highway 74. This is really oriented on the south side of Highway 74, so south of Carriage Oaks. The Community Gateway District is trying to look for smaller grain, commercial development and things like that, with interparcel access and trails and things like that. Although the currently requested R20 zoning is not a commercial zoning classification, the property does sit on the border of the Community Gateway and future and estate residential character area. So it sits right on the border. Of course, estate residential promotes low-density residential uses. This being the case, the comp plan and future development strategy they should be taken as a guide and not as a pure stark requirement, especially when we have properties that sit on the threshold of both of those. And so staff likes to take a look at that and really make considerations about the conformity to adjoining uses in that circumstance. Especially in this circumstance because the applicant is seeking a downzoning from C1 to R20. And that is not incompatible with a lot of the surrounding uses. Staff does recognize that the property being developed at a lower intensity than Community Gateway does not pose any major conflicts except that buffer requirement that I talked about. So it would, if there were no conditions placed on this zoning, basically create an illegal condition for the property next door because they don't have the required 75-foot buffer between them and residential. That being the case, going into the ordinance compatibility, the zoning, does it permit, is it suitable with surrounding properties? It is staff's determination that it is suitable if there is a condition of incorporating the necessary 75-foot buffer between the residential and commercial properties on this property. So if we rezone this property to R20, it's staff's recommendation that the 75-foot buffer be incorporated onto this property so that zoning condition is met. And it doesn't put the adjoining property into an illegal status in terms of meeting that development requirement. The applicant is aware of this and has requested zoning that's particular to that, and I'll show the site plan that was prepared by the applicant. Will the zoning adversely affect adjacent properties? It's determined that the proposed zoning with the requested condition of incorporating the necessary 75-foot buffer would not adversely affect adjacent properties. It should be noted that without this buffer, the O&I and C1 properties to the west do not have the ability to accommodate that 75-foot buffer. So that would create that illegal condition that I mentioned. As such, a rezoning of this property to R20 this condition would run with the land and meet the ordinance requirements in a way that does not create a problem. Does the property have reasonable economic use as currently zoned? As zoned, the property does have reasonable economic use, but it is small and unusually shaped for a C1 property. R20 allows for the property to be combined with the adjacent property as long as that zoning buffer remains in place and utilized in a less restrictive way. So the setbacks between the commercial property and the residential property lowered, and if they combine them and they keep the 75-foot buffer, then that'd be more flexible, buildable area. Would the proposed zoning overburden existing infrastructure? No, it's a down zoning from commercial. So again, a condition that the property incorporate a 75-foot buffer at its western boundary as shown by the site plan should be incorporated as a legal consideration for the zoning change. Let me pull up that site plan right here. So the applicant has incorporated this site plan with the application. You can see here the 75-foot buffer is notated on this western property line. And it would satisfy the zoning requirement that these properties be buffered from one another. So that office institutional, both office and C1 are considered commercial zoning classifications. There's a minimum 75-foot buffer requirement. So staff does recommend approval of the rezoning with the condition that the 75-foot buffer be incorporated as shown consistent with this survey, and that this survey be recorded as a plat for the property as well. If the properties are to be combined, that zoning condition would run with this as well, and that 75-foot buffer would have to be retained. So that is an overview of the property. Here I can pull up the zoning map as well. The applicant and the owner are here tonight for any questions, and if you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you very much. As this is a public hearing, we'll have two portions to the public hearing, one for those in favor of this change, one for those opposed. So at this point, I would like to open the floor up to anyone who would like to speak in favor of this change. Please come forward, state your name. Tell us what you think, which includes the applicant.
Okay, so my name is Clay Adams. I am the owner of the property. Our intention, and Philip, if you don't mind, can you pull up actually that floodplain that you showed? I think this will, yeah, that's perfect. So just where it says Tract A, and this is not on the piece of property that we're talking about, that is where the extent of our build is going to be on this second property. So just south on that knoll sitting up there. There's really only a couple of places where this property, either Tract A or Tract B, actually perk well. And so we're going to build on Tract A. There's no intention of building any kind of major structure at all on Tract B, with the exception of a possible maybe barn of some sort, an equipment barn, but we would certainly fall within, outside of that buffer line. And so that's our intention. We're going to keep most of the woods up as possible, and really only disturb that sits in the very back on the residential side right there. And then obviously our driveway is intended to probably coincide right across from the backside entrance of Dogwood Church there. And we'll kind of run just along the left side of that floodplain, and the house will sit there. Again, we don't intend to really encroach on the Glendalough side at all with any kind of major construction.
So basically, we have a house
Yes, sir.
and a barn.
That's correct. And it would be, we haven't decided where we're going to put the barn yet, but it would probably be somewhere just over the boundary, the existing boundary. So we're not putting it up against the, am I saying that correctly, yes, Richard? Yeah. We're not putting it up even against the revised boundary or the buffer. We're not putting it that far. This just gave us a little bit of flexibility as to if we needed to have some things shift a little bit. we wouldn't be imposed by the line in the center there quite as much.
So you think the house might be, what we're looking at, it says track A 9.5, the house probably be in that area?
That's exactly where it'll be, yes, sir.
And the barn might be over here on. where
On
it
the
says
property
track B.
line. Yeah, it'll actually probably be closer to the property line or just over the
Oh,
property
okay.
line.
Okay.
So we're not really trying to disturb that other part. You know, I moved here in 2004 and have pretty much been in Tyrone most of that time, a short time in Noonan, but my business is here. And so this is kind of our forever home, and plan for it to be that way for many, many years to come. So.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this change?
Yes, I'm the applicant, Richard Spears. I'm the architect for Mr. Adams. The only thing I would like to add to it is Philip, would you bring up that first floodplain that had the images on it, the color image? That one's worth looking at. And the history is, yes, that's the one. And the history is really good for what you're saying too. Like when this, I don't know what the motivation of the previous owner was, but let me infer. I think what he was doing, he or she, was this property as one piece is, half of it isn't even worth building anything on because of the floodplain. You can't, you can mow it and that's about it. Plant seeds, but you can't build anything in that floodplain. So as you can see, what they did is they split the property in two so that they could make it more valuable to sell on one side. Now, I've been on this property, I've walked all over it, and even the commercial zone is a little iffy towards that floodplain. So this property in particular, if someone had an objection, say, well, we don't have enough commercial, we gotta have commercial. Well, this isn't the property to do it because the C1 portion of this property, it doesn't perk well, as Mr. Adams said. There's only a couple of places you can do it. You're restricted by the size that you can do this with a septic system as far as the development can be. And if this was to remain commercial, I'm not a betting person, but I would bet there would not be any commercial development on this for years to come, just because of the negatives that's impacted on this piece of property. And when Mr. Adams and I first walked this, I looked at it and he was looking at me, for his residence to give me some advice on whether it'd be good for a residence. First thing I said is, I don't think you could develop anything but a residence on this property. So what we're doing with this application is we're trying to consider what's the best use of this property. And of course, Mr. Adams is the owner, he wants to build his house there. I think it's perfect for a residence, and even for what's there because of how close it is to the creek, and it's just a beautiful piece of property. And I think the negative of this property is it is commercial, and it was developed commercial, in my opinion, just to sell the property. But it's not really worth as much of a commercial property that it could be. You can find better places in Tyrone.
And if I might add, and you guys are probably aware of this property sat, it was for sale for quite some time. I inquired about it about a year and a half before I actually bought it. And I was just trying to figure out some access to get back there to look at it. And I called the realtor. I was like, hey, where can I even walk in? It's so thick back here. But eventually I forced my way through with a little machete and got back there. And then we did wind up having to do, and forgive me, I'll forget these terms, Philip may know, but we had to do the highest level soil testing just to identify the very small areas that would actually perk on both of those properties. And so it's extremely limited. And I think that condition alone is what Richard was speaking to relative to the commercial property as it stands today. I don't know that there's enough area that would perk certainly not with a traditional system. It would have to be some sort of modified system that wouldn't be a traditional septic for sure.
I'll just note, staff did talk to the Department of Environmental Health. One of the concerns about this property, at least the residential side for development, was the area for a reserve field. And so the flexibility of having more land available for reserve field was discussed. So that was an environmental health discussion for the property.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this change? None, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Now open the portion of the public hearing for anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this change. Please come forward. None, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and open it up for commission comments and questions.
I have one just for clarity. And again, I apologize to the applicant and to my colleagues for being late. I apologize for that. The picture that we're looking at currently, so this is 5 acres? Because on one thing, we saw 5.0 acres and then 9. I'm confused here.
Yes, I'm sorry. The property we're discussing is this one on the left. It is 5 acres, 5.02 acres. The remaining tract on the other side is 9.58.
But the house that you're talking about,
Yes.
is going to be on,
Yes, to be clear, they're talking about this property. We're considering this
you're
property. tonight.
considering, okay,
Yes, yes.
okay.
They're just,
I will add on to that with a question then. I would assume at some point there'll be a request or petition to combine these two properties, or how will that work? So you'll build the house on one and you'll build the barn, if you do that, on the other piece of property and keep them as separate pieces of property.
well, yeah, I think.
How would that work legally?
It would be possible to combine the property. In fact, I think it would be staff's recommendation that if the zoning condition is placed, that we plat the properties together with that zoning buffer in place. That would eliminate the property line between the two as well, so it just creates more flexibility. That would be staff's
That
recommendation.
accessory structure,
Yeah,
that
so
was my concern. If it's on the other piece of property and they're two separate properties,
yes, yeah, and you're correct. An accessory structure requires a principal structure on the property in order to exist. So it was staff's intention that we would, this would be a zoning condition, but that a plat would follow it to combine the properties and retain that 75-foot zoning buffer on there as well.
I would assume this is a rhetorical question, but I will ask the applicant, are you willing to go through that process to combine the properties, or does that change your plan?
That's fine. I'm willing to do that. Yeah.
What the applicant has submitted here in terms of this site plan is that's 90% of the way there, yeah.
Okay.
All right, good.
Thank you, thank you.
That clears that, because that was, my second question is the buffer. And I know that's a condition. And Philip, you have to help me here. With putting conditions on things, how do we know that these conditions are going to be met? What happens next if we recommend approval with these conditions? How would we ensure that those conditions are met with a buffer?
So, yeah, so it would be part of any development application that comes to the town for the property. We'd be ensuring that zoning buffer. That's part of the reason why platting the property afterwards is important, because that will record at the courthouse that buffer on the property, and that will run with the land. So anytime that there's a development application, that buffer is shown, it's recorded, it's in place, and that we track it just like we would track any other type of recorded item on a property, be it an easement or be it anything like that. That would be seen at every point. If the property is sold, future owners would have access to the recorded plat for the property, and that would be shown on the property. So all of that would run with the land and be visible so that it's not forgotten, so to speak.
Would there be a site plan for this required to come back through for us?
Not, because it's residential, no.
No,
And
okay.
if they combine the properties, that would, it would also not be an application that comes before you. Only divisions of land where we create new properties, you know,
Okay.
additional properties comes before planning commission. So it would be administrative, but it would administratively get, you know, recorded, and that plat would come through us and go for review. And for residential properties, we do have we have a site plan process that we go through. Particularly if it's a large property, if they're floodplains, they'll have to do what's known as an ESPC plan, an erosion control and sediment plan. And that will show the buffer on there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That resolves your question?
That
Good.
does.
Okay. Any other questions or issues or comments? None, I will ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve 5.02 acre tract, parcel number 0728-066 from C1 to R20 with the condition of 75-foot buffer on the western boundary line.
To combine the properties.
Is that necessary?
Is that necessary?
It was,
for
it was,
this?
it's a staff recommendation, yes.
Add that recommendation as well?
And that recommendation
That
to
condition?
include the, yes.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on, no new business, staff comments.
I'll just note that we are moving forward with our comprehensive planning process. Right now, for the planning commission, Mr. Duncan's going to be on the steering committee. But of course, any updates and things we'll continue to have here at our planning commission meetings after each steering committee, and we'll be bringing things before you as well. But we've kicked that off with our information session that happened last Tuesday. And then we're going to be scheduling our first public hearing that will initiate that process with council as soon as well. Sometime in May, we'll have that first initial public hearing for the comp plan. We will also be contracting with Elevating Missions Consulting. They're going to be helping us with the public engagement side. That's the most intensive part of it. Every other component of the comp plan we'll be doing in-house. So that'll save us a good chunk of change. We'll be able to do that in-house and take care of that. I just spoke to the Atlanta Regional Commission today and kind of outlined that process, made sure they were comfortable with me doing it on my own, save the public engagement, and they were very helpful. So we'll be continuing with that process, and we'll be doing it for the next basically year. So moving forward.
Thank you. Moving on to commission comments.
Got a question for Philip. Going on Sonoy Road, that property that we made, I think it went from R2, sitting around on railroad tracks. And it's a house, and she was going to put a daycare center in there.
Oh, yeah.
They have cleared the land right beside it, which is still part of that property, and put a detention pond in there. What's going on there?
That's going to be RV. It's Shamrock Storage is extending their parking over there. They've owned that property.
They own that
for a
property.
while.
Okay.
I believe that site plan did come. I think it came before y'all. But it was a long time ago. They delayed the start of the project by a
All
considerable
right, so that
amount of
belongs
time.
to the RV. I thought it belonged to that house.
No, it's Shamrock Storage owns it, and
Okay.
they'll just be doing some extra parking over there. We have some landscaping and screening stuff that still needs to go up over there too, but that's what that is, yeah.
Okay. And I will ask the question, did you get a response from CSX on the railroad crossing at Sonoya Road, Dogwood Trail?
I did not. We reached out and, because I know there's a pothole there, there's a condition, so, we did reach out. I'll say this, I heard back from CSX regarding, they actually called me today about a crossing at State Route 92, somewhere it's State Route 92. And I said, well, that's not in our jurisdiction, but we do have a pothole at Dogwood Trail. And he's like, that's not my project. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, I tried.
Thank you for trying.
But we'll stay on them, and I'll make sure I follow up with Scott to see, because they are you saw some of the porta-johns that they put up. They're doing work, and he should have a contact. He should have a contact that's gonna be able to get us what we need. So I'll make sure that I just maybe go more directly through Scott.
Okay, any other commission comments or questions? or
Philip, can you
issues?
ask Scott about Dogwood Trail grassing the shoulders again?
Yes.
Wait a minute, let me rephrase. Grassing the shoulders?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And adding grass on it since they paved so.
Add some more fill dirt because the rain's gonna keep
It's,
washing it away.
Yeah, it's,
And
yeah.
it's gonna sink below, even further below the road level in some of those areas.
And just another announcement, Arrowwood Road, everybody's aware is closed and
I
will be
found that
closed.
out.
Yo, did you go too far down the road?
I went down there and realized, Philip told me that was gonna be closed at some point.
Yeah, so it is closed. There is a sign. We're gonna try and do a little bit better with some visibility, maybe pull some of the barricades up a little bit, because that is even though we have a couple of signs over there, we're still encountering some issues. with
How
people
much
going down
longer
there.
do you think for
So
Arrowwood?
it's planned to be extended or closed for an extended period of time, so probably another potentially like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
But it was one of those things where it saved us over $100,000 to be able to do that.
I'll tell you what, that sucker is flowing right now. I know we're not complete, but
Yeah,
There's no
it's already
stopping.
working
it's
well.
working
I
great.
think everybody will be really pleased, especially as the landscaping goes in. We did some very specific work with the landscape architects from Pond to elevate that roundabout as a gateway point. There'll be an entryway sign. There'll be a small stone retaining wall on the inside with, Town of Tyrone on it as welcome signage. We've got a lot of plantings. We'll have cobblestone at the aprons instead of concrete, so that'll be nice. It wasn't actually, believe it or not, it was not that much more of a bid alternate to do cobblestone.
Cool.
For the whole project, it was like an extra. And so the cobblestone, and then the splitter islands are also have, a lot of times they're just all concrete.
Yeah.
The center of the splitter islands in a lot of places will have plantings in the middle of them, so. And of course, the Maltese Trail will be connected, and we'll get some.
Are the bids going out for Tullamore's entrance?
I think we just wrapped up land acquisition, so yes,
Oh,
soon,
okay.
yes.
I missed
We'll
something.
discuss later on.
Okay,
We've got a multi-use path crossing going there from Kelsworth to
Okay.
Greencastle.
good. Still
Don't ask.
no solution to the issue of golf carts going down Sonoya Road from the railroad tracks down to the Maple Shade.
The council's.
Really is no solution to that, is
Council
there?
has voted that we're not to do that. We've actually been directed to put up signage to make sure that, is visibly noticed to everybody. There's just no clear and clean way to get across CSX's rail line there in a legitimate way. And so that's just kind of where we sit with it.
Last week, I've been twice golf cart going down that road, which
I
is
think
a
we'll,
concern because the big trucks are coming off of 74. They're pulling out they're coming north on Sonoya Road. They come around that corner onto Dogwood Trail at a pretty rapid clip.
we'll probably continue to see golf carts there.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen, but we are in short order going to be putting up some signage that says no golf carts.
Okay.
So
It's a-
council's pretty much written it in as hard a stone as they can about it.
I'm afraid at some point, we're going to have an incident.
That being the case, though, we've wrapped up land acquisition for the Kelsworth to Greencastle crossing, and we are going to be shortly putting out to bid the Crestwood Road path. So that will be that alternate route that will be directing people to take, and it'll be a nice connection.
Thank you. All right. Any other commission comments?
Ask about the post office.
Jeff wants to know about the post
No, I
office.
did not. David wants to know about the
Do you
post
know
office.
anything about their pension fund? Because I think that's thrown things. That's created a whole extra layer of dynamic that whole new level of uncertainty.
Wow.
Anything that I tell you would probably be a lie. The PO boxes are open. The retail side it's really and truly a complete unknown. We know they want to open it, they have an intention to open it, they are done physically in that space, but yeah, it's just a mess logistically. So PO boxes are available. You'll have to buy the PO boxes in Peachtree City, but PO boxes are available, that's open. We know they want to get in there, but anytime they tell us something, it's not true. So I don't want to tell you when.
Okay, before any other questions come up like that,
I'm done.
ask for motion for adjournment.
Make a motion.
Second.
We are all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.